Orion isn't just a dominant constellation in the night sky. It's recognized by most ancient cultures as the home of the gods, and in some cases, as the origin of civilization itself. Drawn from his book, The Missing Lands, Freddy Silva is here to talk with us about some of the most ancient and anomalous people on Earth. A lot of people listening to this here of Orion, they think, Orion, that's where the reptilians are from. That's the first thing that's going to come up in a lot of people's minds. What do you mean Orion advanced beings help settle this place, right?
I know where that comes from, and it's actually a bit of a misnomer. It's a bit of a misnomer. It's the fact that you take things too literally. The thing to understand about ancient information is that a lot of it's metaphorical and symbolic. You have to understand the metaphor. And a lot of these people, a lot of these gods from the flood, had a badge of office. They were called the people of the serpent. And that happens in South America, Central America, in Portugal, where I was born, and also in the Middle East, all the way. Right. There's a band of people, and of course through India, they're the Naga people, the Nagi, and then consequently the Anunnaki, as they were called in India. And I always wondered, well, were they literally reptilians or was this metaphoric? And the more I've asked ancient people who are still around, they'll say, actually, it's a metaphor, because the serpent, as you know, is a symbol of the invisible currents that flow through the universe and the earth.
So it flows of consciousness, even.
And they behave like serpents. So if you're a master of the natural laws, which the gods were, which is what made you a god, it wasn't the fact that there was a guy sitting on a throne with a white beard. That's not what it meant. A god was any person, any mortal being that had control of the laws of nature becomes a god. Because a god is a force of nature. And therefore, the euphemism that we used was a person of the serpent, because they've handled the serpent energy. So it doesn't mean that they were reptilians. It means that they were harnessed to the serpent energy. So they understood the laws of physics and how to manipulate it. So that puts the whole complexion. So in a matter of speaking, yes, they were kind of reptilians coming from Orion, but not physically reptilians.
Not that type. That are also referred to as having come from Draco, or Draco, however you say it.
Draco.
Yes, from Draco, which people have drawn and they've shared their experiences with, which are the ones that we've come to know as the reptilian species. But it's always pegged back to Orion in almost every conversation that the reptilians are from Orion. But in fact, this isn't. The reptilians in physical form that I'm talking about, would that be more representative of having come from Dracos?
It comes from somewhere else. It's a completely different story altogether, because the people, these gods that came from Orion, were represented in human form. In fact, the euphemism that I hear all the time is they were human-like, but not quite human. And they were very comfortable with them. Yes. Whereas many cultures, including people in North America, like the Wichita of Oklahoma, they say that after the flood, and there was few groups of gods that were remaining, the children of the gods beget children from the women with whom they intermarried, and the women died during childbirth, and these were the Nephilim, which means the children of Orion, and they're the ones who were very deformed, and they're the ones that caused all the problems in the world. And it was because of them that the flood was initiated in the first place. Otherwise, if that hadn't happened, we wouldn't be living on the planet Earth right now. Planet Earth would be governed by a race of red-haired, tall people, actually giant people, covered with red hair, which were giants. So that's where it all comes from. It's a very different thing altogether.
A lot of confusion around the Anunnaki and where they came from.
Oh God, yes. It's a minefield. Again, we tend to focus on the negative. It's always the fallen watchers, and that means that everybody was bad people and they did human experiments. Yeah, if you read the real story, the original story, there was a small group of these watchers who were basically craftspeople. They're masters of certain arts. Each one of them was responsible for knowing something intimately about the subject. And they decided to go, sayonara, we're out of here. We're going to hang out with the humans, despite the fact they were told not to. That created all kinds of problems. That's not how we want to talk about.
Are you saying that's the legacy we know of?
That's the legacy that we tend to focus on, whereas the rest of the story, the 80% of the story is like, well, actually, we had the Lords of Anu, who were the hierarchy, who said that, even we...
Sons of Watchers, so to speak?
The Watchers were the nickname of the people that surrounded the Lords of Anu. So they had the hierarchy, and they said, even we know things that the Watchers don't. So once the Watchers really know what they're doing, and they know quite a lot. But once they really know, then we teach them something else that we know, and even we don't know what everything knows, because of the Lord of Anu itself knows everything. So basically, there was this big hierarchy of people, and they were basically in charge of figuring out all the accoutrements of knowledge around the world, and they acquired all the information. They would disseminate that to different people at certain points in time, and they would drip feed that. And it's because of them that all the ancient cultures hold these gods in very, very high esteem. So the center of any culture, from whether it's Hopi or where it's the Nagi in India, or people in the middle of Fiji or Tonga in the middle of the Pacific, they still hold their wisdom keepers to be umbilical cords to the gods who are from Orion. It's always about the Anu, always about their association with Orion, and it's always the fact that Orion forms a kind of half at the center of each tribe, because they said, without the knowledge that we got from these intermediaries from Orion, the gods, whether the Anunnaki or whatever you want to call them, or the Watchers, the groups that became who they are today, they would not have the social structure that hunter-gatherers lacked back when the time when they were interacting physically with these people. And that's where the story becomes so interesting, because it's not just a shamanic connection. The Waitaha, the Hopi said, no, there's a physical contact. We had physical contact with these people.
So let's get back to Göbekli Tepe, because there was some symbolism there.
Yeah, it's funny how these things overlap, because now we're talking about gods in Egypt. Are they separate from everybody else? It turns out they're not, because when you discuss the physiognomy of the Urukeu, you're also talking about the same physiognomy of the followers of Horus in Egypt.
Right.
The Aku Shemsu Hor, to put them in the right thing. It means shining ones, followers of Horus. Well, the same people are also linked to Göbekli Tepe. We start off, for example, with the famous Pillar 43, which has the vultures on it, it has the 3 bags on it. But there's another pillar there that has a beautiful girdle, and it has a U symbol with a belt, and it has these H symbols along the girdle. I'm thinking, as a graphic designer by trade, I'm looking at this symbol, I'm thinking, that looks suspiciously like a symbolic version of the constellation of Orion, because it looks like an H. Maybe. You can't really, summarize one or the other, but I thought, why not? And then, one day when you're looking at the natural view of Göbekli Tepe to the southeast, you're looking down to the plain of Haranu, which is the plain of the Anu. Suddenly, in 10,400 BC, on the winter solstice, the first time the belt of Orion rises above the horizon, flanked by 3 stones, and you're thinking, my God, there's an alignment here. And you also have the fact that you have a connection between Göbekli Tepe and Giza. Now, Giza, we have to understand, is the place of Osiris, or the plain of Osiris. And he was associated with the constellation Sahu, which means Orion in Egyptian. So Osiris is the embodiment of the constellation of Orion in the earthly form. And we now know, thanks to both Val and Gilbert, that on the spring equinox, 10,400 BC, the pyramids match the constellation of Orion. Well, Göbekli Tepe is not the real name of this location. The real name is Portasar. You have to know you're Armenian. So I asked some Armenian friends, what does Portasar mean? I said, well, Port is easy. It means umbilical cord. I thought, okay. What does Asar mean? Silence. Well, it's got to mean something. I said, we don't know. It never comes up in Armenian. I said, you know what? Because it's not Armenian, it's Egyptian. It's the original name of Osiris. Osiris is a Greek name. Asar is his real name, so it's Porta Asar. Now you got the umbilical cord of Osiris. And I'm thinking, my God, Orion, Osiris. Why is it an umbilical cord? It's that moment where you get a download from the management that shows me the image of a line going through the 3 pyramids. And I'm going, okay, I'll go back to, get my diagrams out and archaeological surveys and Google Earth and draw a cord between the corner of the small pyramid of Giza and the large pyramid. And guess where it ends up? Göbekli Tepe. So there's your umbilical cord. So we have these places which are connected to the same star, the same gods are described with the same physiognomy, very tall, elongated heads, red hair, and always dressed in very long gowns, and they're master astronomers, and they're always associated with the flood mythology. So Göbekli Tepe, Giza, and the Urukei of New Zealand are now all one and the same group of people.
If you like this video and you want to see more amazing content, go ahead and check out the next video on our channel.